Hello, 2020 audience. Hi, I am Liz Hinlein. This is the 2020 series presented by New York Film Academy. 2020 is a series of creative conversations with visionaries in various crafts of the filmmaking and creative industry. We do 20 minutes of cool conversation between myself and an amazing creative visionary, and then 20 minutes of answering questions from you, the global audience. So without further ado, I would love to present Nicolas Simon, who is a brilliant, creative, seminal producer, line producer, and executive producer who works with all the big boys in the international world. So, hey, Nick.
Hey there, how are you? That's quite an introduction. I don't know if you see I'm blushing, but thank you.
Oh, thank you. So I am curious, and this is really like the American me, what overall, like what are the differences between producing a film in America and say producing a film in Asia?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it's very similar, you know. Sort of student films are pretty, you know, different levels of production are pretty similar, but then there are huge differences just in terms of you know, there aren't the union rules that you have except on, you know, studio productions or you know, that come in with SAG actors or DGA directors. So in one sense, it's much more old school, and you know, even if it's a SAG or DGA production, the local crews aren't. So you know, you're only as good as your crew, and I mean that's sort of the world round. But in Asia, it's really you have to you know we basically follow a lot of the standards and practices from the States. To protect the local crews.
And what are like the misconceptions that you always hear from, say, American clients that want to go shoot in Asia?
Oh, everyone thinks just because it's Asia, it's cheap. And, you know, a camera costs the same amount, if not more, because of import taxes over there. So, you know, people are always shocked that rental prices and stuff are on par, if not a little more expensive than the States. You know, it's also that everyone always feels that you can, I mean, some directors tend to, and producers tend to try to push limits a lot more than they would in the States. But it's also, you know, when you do things right, like we did a project Kong Skull Island for Legendary Pictures and Warner Brothers. And it was 4.5 weeks with the main unit, and it was the first time a tentpole had gone to Vietnam. And you know, we had what 450 people on the set to 600 people on the set every day. And the Vietnamese, it was you know the first time that they'd seen something this big, and it became a life-changing and one of the most memorable experiences for a large portion, both of the foreign crew and also the Vietnamese crew. So and that it tends to happen, I'd say, probably more than it does on set in Los Angeles or Georgia. People really see it's because you're living together. It's a new culture. The food in Vietnam and Thailand is phenomenal, and you know it's yeah, it can be just a life-changing experience.
And because you've worked there for so long and have worked on such big tentpoles like the Avengers and Extraction, what do the locals think about production and American production or European production coming in?
Where the foreigners think everything's cheap, the locals think that they all have huge amounts of money. So you know, the finances is always the big thing, and it's. You know, it's, I mean, Extraction was the biggest movie that's come. We shot 80 to 90% of it in Thailand both for Bangladesh and also India. And it had been a long time since something that big had come to Thailand. And I think it's just always, we had you know, the main crew was 450 people on the first unit, 250 on the second unit, and it's an army. And I think that it's pretty impressive. And you know, I think that when you don't have something like that for a while, it's always a shock when it comes back.
And how do you, I mean, so as for that one, you were the line producer on that, correct?
Yep.
The line producer on location. What are the responsibilities expected of you if you're the production services line producer company there?
So, I mean, what we really, what we see ourselves as is like the studio or the productions partner locally, is that we, on one side, we're sort of glorified travel agents and making sure, you know, the vans pick up, but I'd say there's a much more creative element to it too, where we're figuring out, and it's our job not just to give them any crew, but give them the crew that suits the personalities of their DP, of their production designer, and you know, and also, you know, up to the point of, you know, in every country we work with, and, you know, it happened on Avengers in Bangladesh, and, you know, is that often on, in Vietnam, on Kong Skull Island, but, you know, we often need access to the Prime Minister's office and sort of a local knowledge, high and low, from how to treat, you know, the guards at the gate at 6 o'clock in the morning to, you know, one of the biggest challenges to meet our schedule on Kong Skull Island was we had 2 charters, 2 767s fly in, one with equipment, I think it was 70 tons of equipment, and one with 200 crew members. And we had to clear everyone within, I think it was 12 or 24 hours. And we did it in under that time. But, you know, it's hard for governments and, you know, customs to imagine something like that, because they hadn't done it before. And, you know, we flew in a helicopter and had to air freighted that and had to turn it around. And so, you know, if you have the, you know, support of the government, both from the top down and also the bottom up, and that's, you know, one of our big things, and it's our specialties. And the other thing is really to be able to foresee what's possible and what's not possible, and to come up. Asia has a reputation of being a place where people don't want to lose face, they don't want to say no. So a lot gets promised that then can't be delivered, and that's our job, is to see through that and make sure, you know, things are delivered in a timely manner.
Now, for stuff like that, you obviously would have a big staff like under you to help you work the things out. Are you training everybody? Are they, I mean, because how established is the film industry in Asia, where they have people that are already trained that can, you know, jump in on?
Each country is different, and our business wouldn't be so big if Thailand didn't have such an established international business. You know, when we were doing Extraction, I think that there was something 5 or 6 other large productions from Fast and Furious. It was a 9 or 11 coming through, doing huge second unit stuff, to other Netflix productions. You know, and they had enough crew to support, you know, what was it, 5 or 6 big projects, and the international TV commercial production service. So Thailand has both really well-trained crew and depth of crew. And then what we do is in places like Vietnam, you know, we mix and match crews, and on Kong, we brought in, you know, a number of Thais in key positions to help help support and help train up local Vietnamese. And now, you know, we did a project with the lead of Crazy Rich Asians, the male lead. His name's missing me, and on that, it was a $2 million movie, and there was no use to, or they didn't have the money to bring in a large Thai contingent. So what we did is just bring in stronger people from the UK, And then the Vietnamese rose to the occasion, and you know, we had from production managers to accountants, and they finished on time, on budget. You know, maybe a couple of hiccups, but it was you know, and the movie premiered at Karlovy in the Czech Republic, so I guess it was a success.
Nice. Nice. So if I was like a swaggering producer who wants to, like, you know, do my cool feature over in Thailand or in Cambodia, what are the things that, you know, that are going to trip me up that no one tells me until I get there, and then it all breaks loose?
I mean, don't believe the first person. You know, it's even you know, one thing that I do is, you know, ask people to check us out, or you know, go talk to other companies who do similar things. And you know, I think it's smart for anyone to feel that they have options, or feel that they've done the sort of the research. And you know, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Next one.
But could I go over and produce something without using a production services? So could I infiltrate and?
I mean, that's a good point. There are a number of productions that have tried doing that, often French productions. And, you know, there was a French production, Les Confins du Monde, that Until the End of the World with Gérard Depardieu and stuff. And they'd gone to a company who'd promised them, you know, co-production and this. Found out later the company didn't have, they were on the point of canceling it, and I found out about the project. The company they'd been in touch with didn't have the legal right to be doing what they were promising, and sort of backed themselves in the corner. And we ended up taking on the project. Mainly, well, one of the main reasons, it was the next thing right after Kong, and what we didn't want to do is have the next project after Kong fall apart, because then it gets around in the production community, and Vietnam had already had a reputation of being really difficult with authorization and everything. So we worked with the Ministry of Culture, with the French producers, and you know, figured it out. We actually raised 7 figures out of China for them, and we pulled it off. And that movie also ended up premiering at Cannes. So
very nice. So you take on positions as the line producer, a producer, executive producer. What guides you to taking on which role?
It's I'm not so whatever. It's so. I don't care so much about the title. I'm more concerned about, okay, what does the project need, and what can I offer the project? And you know, on something like Les Confins du Monde, when they didn't have enough money to finish the film, we with our French partner, we figured out, you know, we had a contact in China who wanted to go to Cannes, and the person basically, you know, paid more than $1 million so that they could go to Cannes with people who knew about it, and also invest in the film. And you know, so it's I figured, like, the work comes first and the title comes second. And you know, I've got there was a Michael Mann project that started, and we started as line producers. I chased down the project from when I read, it was based on a Mark Bowden book, and I'd read it in the trades, and I started hassling FX and hassling Michael Mann's office, not knowing anyone there, and got a meeting. Michael ended up not choosing us in the beginning as the service company, but happenstance and me being pushy, it came around and came back to us. And then, you know, I started as a line producer and ended up, unfortunately, ended up as a co-producer. And unfortunately, the project, you know, has stalled. But it's, you know, it's. I think the way to succeed in this business is to stay humble, but sort of know your worth.
And be persistent, obviously.
And be persistent. Yeah.
Be persistent. I was looking at this amazing film that you produced, A Prayer Before Dawn, and that just seems like emotionally retching, but visually fantastic.
Yeah.
How?
Sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
Because is this more of like not a personal project, but you were a producer on, so that means you had the creative vision
Well,
and.
I mean, this is another one that they talked to other service companies in Thailand. And then I ended up meeting, they started talking to myself, and we bought a condo in Bangkok for a while ago, just because we were spending so much money for people in the company on hotel rooms whenever we were over there. So we've got this, people on this call, hit me up if you're coming through Bangkok, but we've got 5 bedrooms, and Jean-Stefan ended up staying there for a year and a half or 2 years. The director ended up staying there. And during the course of the time, we really clicked on a creative level. And he sort of insisted that they go with us for production service. And then also that I got moved up to being a full producer on it. And it was really, we're looking for other projects to do together, and it was truly a creative collaboration that way. But then again, it's, I started out as a line producer on it, and I mean, it was also, I think what he did with the movie is absolutely brilliant, because we had not much money, well below $2 million. And the script in the beginning and the story could be actually really cliche, and what he's done with it is made it such an it's an exhausting journey. But we had a 15-minute standing ovation at the Palais at Cannes when it premiered, and it's a movie that I'm really so proud of, just because it's against all odds, and then also with I felt like I did my job of supporting the director's vision, and meanwhile also being sort of financially responsible and stuff, and it shows in the end.
Wow. Well, it seems like also all your background and your history worked up to that, where you could know how to work that budget.
Yeah.
You get every.
I mean, that's like, so we shot most of it in an abandoned prison in Thailand. And basically it had been abandoned when he first started scouting. It had just been abandoned because they didn't want to tell anyone that they were leaving before. So literally it looked like an apocalypse. It's the clothes were still on the ground and hanging up, and posters on the walls and everything. And but then we ended up redressing it, and we shot the bulk of the movie there. And some of the actors had actually spent time in that prison, which was pretty haunting. But then we needed the big final fight scene. We needed to get a lot of extras, and Jean-Stefan had scouted, and we have a company in the Philippines, and our partner there had done I think Nat Geo thing that's set in prisons, and they go to live ones, and they'd gone to this live prison in Cebu where they all danced to Michael Jackson. It's one of their programs. And so we ended up doing a deal with prison warden and the prisoners. They all got a new set of clothes and extra food and stuff, and they were allowed to stay up late for 2 nights. And that way we had 5,000 extras on a low budget, 5,000 extras a night on a low budget film.
Wow, that's good producing. That's really good producing.
Right.
There's actually a lot of questions. So I'm just gonna throw out some out to you. Okay. In no special order. John Morrissey asks, is it possible to raise production financing in Asia outside of China?
Yes, and we've had success there was a movie that Malcolm Venville, big commercial director, did called 44-Inch Chest, and we raised 7 figures out of Vietnam. I just got off a call today about one of the movies at Cannes, and they came up with a idea of basic crowdfunding, but for high net worth individuals to put together a consortium to raise around $20 million. So we'll see if, I can't say too much, see if it actually works. But, you know, Thailand, Vietnam, but I'd say most of those countries invest more in their local industry. But if you have the right international one, you know, they can, you know, they can open up possibilities.
Brandon asked, this is a good question. What is one lesson in producing you wish you had learned sooner?
Well, I wish I'd had a mentor, and I never really had a mentor. So I learned by a lot of mistakes, but I learned early on, you make mistakes and you fix them, and but just never do them again. Never make the same mistake twice. And I wish that I'd learned that earlier. And then it's also, I wish that you know what, I wish that at a younger age I had the knowledge that I have now. But that's the whole pattern of life. That's a more philosophical question.
I always say to, when I'm teaching is to the students, is that you're going to be smarter at the end of the day than you are at the beginning of the day.
Yeah.
And do you mentor now, having not had a mentor?
I guess I don't really, I don't think of it. I often think of it as friendships. But one thing that we, you know, we, both myself and sort of as a company, is I don't really care what your background is, you know, what schooling you have. If you have enthusiasm and, you know, and a love for filmmaking and are willing to learn, then, you know, we have opportunities. One of our Vietnamese partners, you know, had, before Kong Skull Island, she worked on a couple of documentaries and stuff. And now she was the one who was production managed Monsoon. She just production managed the Five Bloods, and you know, in a couple more years, 3 or 4 years, she's gained so much experience, and she's really she's made mistakes but learned from them, and you know, so I guess I do.
So when you're having like all these different types of directors come in, say from the guy from Extraction, Spike Lee with the Five Bloods, does the vibe on the set, even though it's like, say, all Thai crew, does that change? Have you felt the change between what type of film is being made?
Oh, it's like, I mean, I think it's like every business. It's like, you know, politics. It's, but it's, you know, a film set is really from the top down, and you know, the director and the producer, the main producer, set the tone of, you know, is this set, you know, is this quiet? Is it, you know, are these people yellers? Or, you know, but by and large, I'd say Thai crews, no matter who the directors are, you'll be amazed how efficient they are, and then also how quiet they work, which is, you know, and meanwhile, Vietnamese crews are a lot noisier, but, you know, so each country has its own personality too. But, you know, Thailand's also just had so much international experience, and, you know.
I did, yeah. I've shot a bunch in Thailand, and I was telling you, I enjoyed, they always wear team shirts, like you can tell, and they'll say on the back grip, or it'll say what they're doing, the position, and that they always seem to be ending up at lunch giving each other back rubs.
Yeah. And it's the food on set is very important too.
Yeah,
so,
it's
yeah,
ridiculous. It's so good. And so, how are I haven't worked in the Philippines. What are the crews like there?
I mean, it's sad, and like, you know, it's if there are any Filipinos on the call, I send out a lot of respect. I absolutely love the country. I find it sad because they had the same sort of history of movies from the 70s, international movies shooting there from the 70s on, as Thailand did. But for various reasons, you know, the Philippines doesn't have that industry now of international production service. And I think that they have one of the most a much more creative, local independent film scene right now than Thailand. You know, they're going to Cannes every year, and I think there's a big showcase this week. But for international production service, we actually bring in a large number, even on TV commercials, a large number of like regional people, just to maintain the the international standard that we're known for.
Susie asks, are you able to speak about your experiences dealing with censorship boards in Asia?
Oh yeah, it's I often laugh, and it's like the censorship boards, or the film board in Thailand or Vietnam or Cambodia. You don't have it in Japan. Don't have it in the Philippines. You have it in Malaysia. I mean, I think that there are things that you can that are expected. I think that there's been a learning curve, especially in Vietnam, which is a communist country, and films were seen as propaganda and as a tool for propaganda. So there's been a learning curve that we're still going through. But I think a lot of it also depends on relationships, and and you've got to respect their system. In some ways, and the reason I was laughing in the beginning, it's not so different often dealing with them than dealing with sometimes studio executives or the corporate environment too. Is you have to understand what what's motivating them, what they're looking for, and play to that.
So when and you've done a bunch of Avenger films, and so what do you get a kick out of doing them? Obviously, like a lot of really fun, big.
The best thing is my daughter's super proud. They're some of her favorite movies. So, but it's the Avenger projects have all been second unit, an aerial unit. So it hasn't been the main shoots. Almost all of those are really done in studio, and but it's not. They're fun, and there've been amazing people who I've met on it, whether on the calls and we meet in person later, or that we work. It sounds corny, but there's a lot of the same people work on the different projects and stick together sort of once, and it's nice to have that consistency.
With that, so do you have like a core team of, say, like production managers or people under you, and how do you keep them consistently from project to project?
So we have our company only has, I think, 5 or 6 full-time employees, and we're working now in 14 different countries. We've done up to 12 projects in 5 countries simultaneously, and so it's the strength is really the crew and the freelance crew. And there are, depending on the country, or let's say all around, there are probably about 10 to 12 line producers, production managers who work with us freelance and really work on a consistent basis. And sort of, we're told, and it seems like we're often one of their first choices. So if they get offered other jobs, they're calling us to see if we have anything. And it's also, we've really worked to develop some of their careers, where they started as the production manager on, there's a woman, Pam, who's a production manager on Avengers we did in Bangladesh, and she was just the production manager for Extraction main unit. And then another woman did the production managed the Philippines shoot, and now this year she line produced another Netflix project called Finding Ohana that Ian Bryce, it's a kid's story a la the Goonies, that Ian Bryce produced, and Netflix is going to put out in August. And so now she was line producing 25 days of main unit. So you know, I think it's our responsibility to know what people, figure out what people are good at, and give them opportunities and also support to grow.
Totally. That's great. Mazen has a long, let's see. Hi, I'm from Egypt. My question is how to shift from independent filmmaking to commercial filmmaking, how to attract producers to invest in movies that have different approaches of storytelling. Because in my experience as a filmmaker, I see most producers prefer to stick to a certain kind of genre or storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, if we look at, I mean, we've done, you know, a whole bunch of movies between $1 million and $2 million. And then we're also doing, you know, I'd say we're in the unique position because we started as a production service company, and I wasn't so concerned about building into producing careers. So those things have really just happened more by happenstance or opportunity. And, you know, I think over the coming years, I'm being more forthright with producing original material. But I mean, one thing I said when we started up this company in 2010 is I just want to work with good people. Mm-hmm. And they come in all, you know, and it's also, I love TV commercials because they're short, and you can see them a month after you shoot them. You don't have to wait a year and a half. And it's, I love being on set. So those, you know, those help sort of design our business and have sort of designed my career.
And so we were talking before that now you and your company are going into Japan and sort of broadening and out. And I would love to hear more about what's your vision for that.
So I've always wanted to go in there, and in each country that we've gone into, we have to operate well are strong local partners. They don't need to have a huge amount of film experience, but as I said, like I need to be able to get to a prime minister or for these people to understand how, you know, the immigration office and customs works and all of those inner workings. So I finally found introduction to a really good friend, this one guy, and we did a couple projects, and he totally, you know, 1 foot in Japan, 1 foot in the international film world. And he was talking also about the frustration that a lot of Japanese had, that they're not seen as an international destination for filmmaking, and that, you know, Japanese IP holders are frustrated that their things can't get out to the world. So there's a third partner who we brought in. There'll be an announcement soon, but it's called Studio Muso. And so what we're using is Indochina's production service as sort of the foundation and the basis. But our two Japanese partners have worked for the studios over the last 20 years, you know, the Hollywood studios and also local Japanese ones. And they have a lot of relationships with local IP holders. So we're also looking at, and especially they're leading the charge with doing original content, starting first for the Japanese market.
Very exciting. That has been a closed entity there.
Yeah, and it's, you know, the world's third largest economy.
And what is your, like, what are your top favorite 3 things that you love about working in Asia?
I'd say my friends, the crews, also the excitement of the crews when they come over to, you know, from the States and shoot there. There's a real camaraderie that I don't find. I produce some things here in the States, and I don't find that. So I think that's one. The food is another, and then sort of the unpredictability, and it keeps, for me, that really keeps it fresh. And you know, that's probably also one reason we've expanded to so many countries. But to keep it, you know, I thrive off of sort of new challenges, and you know, it was a big wish of mine to bring a tentpole to Vietnam, and we got you know, Kong Skull Island, and now it's much easier for the next ones to come in, and we have a couple that look like they'll be going soon. So yeah, I hope that answers it.
That is a good answer. And probably you don't have the crystal ball, but with COVID-19 and all that, which is pretty much what everybody keeps talking about, how do you vision a set that usually had 400 people on it, just give an example? How does that even work now?
I don't have the answers for that yet. I mean, first we have to be able to make, you know, Thailand doesn't have any international flights right now. You know, it's the U.S. flying is difficult. So I think that, you know, before we can even tackle what's happening on the set, there's sort of logistic things that we can't that we have to solve first. So, but I think that it's changed, and you know, huge tent poles are going to have to adapt to how do they do it with you know, smaller teams. You know, I think some of them are going to go the way of The Mandalorian, where you know, where they're just shooting on the LED screens, you know, which is basically sophisticated green screen. And then, you know, it's also other people are looking at just reducing the size of the crew. There's a project that we're involved with a really visionary director who, you know, it's what, an 8-figure, will be an 8-figure budget, and he doesn't want a crew of more than 30 people. And this was started before COVID. And so I think that we've got to embrace these changes, and you know, and sort of adapt or die. And I don't think it's going to go back to the same thing. And you know, so we'll see.
And for like someone who wants to become a producer, who may have been working, you know, under producers, or working as a line producer, or working as an office PA, or what would you, do they need to keep working and learning under people? Do they need to go find material of their own? Like, what would you suggest?
I think you're basically all of the above, and don't just think it's not about, I mean, it's about having sort of a deck of cards of a lot of different options, and you know, and whether you're line producing or, you know, PAing, or just because this is a business about relationships, timing, and luck. And you know, you don't know when things are going to take off. I mean, we got introduced by a mutual friend who I sort of harangued. He was our location guy on a movie called RX in New Mexico, and I really lit into him and stuff, and he sort of stood up and stayed in touch, went to AFI, introduced me now, and it looks like we're going to be doing some projects based out of Oklahoma together. And so I think that there's perseverance, and there's also, if there's anything I learned pretty early on, don't just have one project. You'll be known as that person with the chicken script or the elephant script. And, you know, if it doesn't catch on fire right away, it's going to, you know, you might not be able to carry it for when it does.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it, you know, it's you got to be in it to win it, basically. And I totally agree. You got to play many different cards, because you don't know when it's going to pop up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And yeah, and I mean, it might sound corny, but also just stay humble. And you know, you know, you've got to, and it's, I think also as a producer, I mean, and especially line producing and stuff, it's the directors and the talents who are the stars, and also who can take, you know, whatever vision that you've had with a material or a project. They're the ones who can take it to a whole nother level, you know. So I mean, I really see my job is standing in the background and giving them a platform to, you know, with a strong foundation.
Yeah, you are the producer that every director wants, basically.
I know some don't like me.
Well, we don't care about those people. Well, thank you so much, Nick. This has been amazing. We are at time and you've given us so much knowledge. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys, and thank everyone for listening in all over the world.
Yes, and thank you, New York Film Academy, for giving us this playground of the 2020 series. And next week we have seminal writer Randy Doughton. And thanks, guys. Have a great week.
All right. Take care. See you.